Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Florentin and this is the third video in my Julian Bream A Life on the Road series. This is the book I've been reading for a few weeks. Rereading. I'm reading this for the second time. I'll place links of the first two videos at the bottom if you want to take a look. I read this book some 25 years ago. Maybe some 20 years ago for the first time. Got it from the local public library. I believe they still have it there. And then earlier this year wanted to look for my own copy. This is obviously a book about the great guitarist Julian Bream and just some of his experiences on the road as a performing classical guitarist. And I looked online to find the book, and apparently this is a quite valuable book and hard to find. It's not in print anymore. I did find 3 or 4 copies at the time and bought the lowest priced one. I think I paid $37-40 on for this on some website I forget the name of. I think it was thriftbooks.com. And I looked the other day to see if there's any more available. I think there's a couple. One of them sells for about $300 on Amazon. So this apparently is a quite valuable book. So I'm going to hold on to it for a while. In the first video, I think I just did a general introduction. I think in the second video, I think I did the first 4 chapters. So today I'll briefly talk about, I'll summarize chapters 5 through 8. I think it has 12 chapters, and I'll do at least one more video in a few weeks. I have my ice cold drink here. This is my, it's Gatorade. I forget the flavor. It's a type of Gatorade. Something freeze. I'm in my yard today. Every room in my house was taken by somebody else, so I can't record in the house. But it's quite nice out here. My AC unit might be a little loud, so I hope that doesn't cover my voice. So anyways, my absolute favorite thing about this book is that it, in it, you learn about Julian Bream's dedication and passion for the instrument and for sharing his art with others. I mean, here's a guy who worked so hard in planning his travels and arranging for traveling and room and board and concert fees and repertoire, and at the same time learning new repertoire and commissioning new works and meeting with luthiers to talk about new instruments. I mean, he was just one of the great giants in the world of classical guitar. He's still alive, by the way, but he's been retired for a few years. Chapters 5 through 8, chapter 5 titled Bangs and Crackles. Here he talks about different composers that he worked with, that he commissioned works from, and one thing that jumped to my attention right away is his mention of William Walton, the composer who wrote the 5 bagatelles for the guitar, and he gives a considerable amount of space in the book. Here's a picture, and it talks about the compositions and how they were written, and how Walton thought that Bream didn't play those compositions enough in his concerts. It was kind of funny to read. Lots of information about different composers in that chapter. Chapter 6 is called Blow Me Bigger. Here he talks about his travels in the US mostly, like New York, places like that. and he describes his interactions with his managers, with his tour managers. Julian Bream did organize his own touring, but he did work with um, people like Harold Shaw. Those of you that have been following the classical guitar world for many, many years, like I have, you would probably know who that is, Harold Shaw. And he was his U.S. tour manager. And talking about large halls and small halls. And there's some talk about guitar strings as well. The sun just got very bright. I don't know if Julian Bream played Augustine strings throughout his career, but at least when writing this book, there's not so much an endorsement of the string, but he certainly talks about the brand a lot and shares how the company went from pretty much a home company where this family made strings in their garage into growing into the big company they are today, Augustine. I haven't played Augustine strings in a while, but when I did play them, I did like them. So it's a good company for sure. Here's talking again about fulfilling appointments for large halls and small halls and things of that nature. In chapter 7, he talks a lot about the Julian Bream consort, which was a ensemble of period instruments. I believe they mostly focused on Renaissance and Baroque music. And here he talks about the challenges of finding not only repertoire but performance venues for a larger ensemble. But actually, the way Julian Bream looked at that was not as a challenge, but as an opportunity to get additional performance opportunities. Some really interesting pictures there, but some historic performances. 1981, different locations throughout Europe mostly. He would play the lute for most of these performances with that ensemble, and talking about repertoire and instruments and things of that nature. Chapter 8 talks about different concert halls specifically throughout some of his touring. And I just finished this one. And again, he mentions a lot of times when he would want to check the concert hall the day before the concert, and you get to read a lot about things that he was disappointed with, such as a squeaky chair that he was given, or too much outside noise, or too much lighting. He does talk about an instance where the air conditioning, or part of the air conditioning, was broken, and it would make a squeaky sound, and he asked the technicians to turn it off, and they said, we can't turn it off because the air conditioning is connected to the stage lighting, so the only way to turn the stage lighting off, the air conditioning off, is to turn everything off, which would put you in the dark. And Julian actually ended up playing that concert in the dark. That's right. And it makes for some interesting reading about that. I forget what location that was, but it did happen. He also talks about a concert in India, which he was asked to do while on the road. In other words, it wasn't a pre-planned performance, and he agreed to do it because it was explained to him that the audience was mostly non-musicians, and that these people were not exposed to classical Western music before, so he agreed to do it because of that. It turned out that the hall was, in Julian Bream's words, terrible, very noisy, noises coming from outside, crowded with mostly women and children, babies, and he was asked to play for hours, literally, for 2 or 3 hours, and with babies crying and people talking, and it was quite an interesting section of the chapter to read. The sun is very bright all of a sudden. Um, also talking about canceling the one concert he ever canceled. I forget what country that was in, when the organizers refused to pay the prepayment that they agreed on, so he had to cancel that concert. And chapter 8 ends with a funny section here where it talks about people recording the concerts on a cassette recorder. Remember those cassette players we used to have 20-30 years ago, and you'd have the record button and you could record live sound. I remember growing up in church and people would record the service every time and then go home and listen. I would sometimes listen to just the music part on those tapes at home. But Julian Bream talks about a place, I believe it was in Germany, and while he was playing through his recital, this gentleman in the front row had a cassette recorder with a wired microphone. I remember those. And this gentleman would push the record button and hold up the microphone like this. And Julian Bream could not believe it. And at the end of his first piece, he walked to the end of the stage and told the gentleman, "No recording, please." So the gentleman said, "Fine." So Julian Bream returns to his seat and starts the second piece. And as he's playing, the gentleman in the seat again pushes the record button and sticks out the microphone. And at the end of that second piece, Julian Bream stands up, goes to the end of the edge of the stage and says, "Please turn that off." And the gentleman says, "Sure." And he turns it off, and then he sits down and he plays again. And sure enough, the gentleman again pushes the record button and sticks out the microphone. And Julian Bream a third time walks to the end of the stage and says, "No recording, please." And the gentleman says, "Fine," and he turns it off. And this keeps happening until halftime of the show, intermission. And Julian Bream walks backstage in total disappointment. And as he sits there relaxing between the two halves of the concert, he hears a crashing sound and lots of applause in the audience. And apparently what had happened, somebody from the balcony of the auditorium walked all the way down to the gentleman with the cassette recorder, grabbed it, took it to the balcony and just dropped it down and crashed it. And the audience started clapping. So that was kind of a funny way to end the chapter. And he does provide a pretty funny picture of an actual concert setting where at least two of the people you can see there are cassette recorders on their lap or in the chair next to them. So that was quite funny. That brings me to the end of chapter 8. If this book was more available online or in bookstores, I would suggest that you go buy it, but apparently it's not available. Maybe your public library would have it. I know mine still does, so that's pretty awesome. I forget what year this was published, 1983, this particular edition. But either way, I'll keep reading it and I'll keep sharing at least one more installment. I think there's 4 chapters left, and I'll share more in a few weeks as I keep reading through it. I think I'll end this video here. I did see Julian Bream live once. I do have an autographed poster from him somewhere, and I did shake his hand, and I said thank you for the concert. This was back in the 90s. It was in the mid-90s. I was an undergraduate student in the classical guitar program at DePaul in Chicago, and this concert was at Northwestern University at what back then was called the Big Stair Concert Hall. I think it's called something else now. But it was an amazing concert. I remember he played the Mampao and some Bach, and it was a great experience. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoy it. As I'm reading through Julian Bream, A Life on the Road. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to write them in the comment section below. If you're not subscribed to my channel, I invite you to subscribe. Also click that bell so you don't miss my uploads. Thank you very much for that. Hope you have a wonderful week. See you next time. Bye bye now.